The Committee on Military, Veterans, and Homeland Security will come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Madam Chair,
Here.
Representatives Coleman,
Here.
Carter,
Present.
Stone. Here. Rogers. Here. McCallum.
Here.
Markkinen.
Here.
Bazat.
Here.
Carrara.
Here.
DuBois.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 10 members present. You do have a quorum.
Representative Stone moves to adopt the minutes from the February 28th, 2023 meeting. Seeing no objections, the meeting minutes are approved. Today, we have a presentation from the Michigan Department of Military and Veterans Affairs and the National Guard Association. We have Terry Sabo, Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs for DMVA, Colonel Scott Myers, MVAA Director Adam Hollier, and National Guard Association Executive Director Jeff Frisby, and Christine Apostle, CFO. They will be discussing the importance of recruiting and retention incentives. I am looking forward to hearing from you today, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee, for having us here today. Again, my name is Terry Sabo, and I oversee the legislative affairs for the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. And I want to start off, though, by saying General Rogers, who is the Adjutant General and our director for the department, sends his regrets for not being able to be here. He's currently serving abroad, so he will be back, though, next week for your committee. So I wanted to make sure you understand that while he's very actively engaged with us and is very interested in this effort of recruitment and retention, he just could not be here today. But I did have the opportunity to bring along some individuals who know quite a bit about what's going on when it comes to recruitment and retention, and more specifically, I think, for this committee, based on what we understand is a program that we have that's our student tuition assistance program. So if I may, Madam Chair, I would like to introduce to you Colonel Scott Myers, who oversees our recruitment and retention, as well as Jeff Frisby from the National Guard Association of Michigan, to talk more about those efforts that you've asked. So I'm going to slide out of the way and make room for Director Ollier to come up and testify as well as soon as these two gentlemen are done.
Okay. We didn't rehearse very well. So I'm excited to be here today. Recruiting and retention, our force is our number one priority for the department. Obviously, the soldiers on the front lines and training those soldiers is our and airmen as well, is our number one priority for our department. Over the last few years, I will say recruiting and retaining has been a bit of a challenge for different reasons. And so we are tackling those different reasons to meet those challenges, because we deserve, obviously, a formidable National Guard for both our state mission as well as our federal mission. So that's not anything strange to any of you all here today. What we learn is that educational benefits are still the number one reason at our MEPS processing station, so our military entrance processing station. Educational benefits still come up as number one. With that, the propensity or wanting to give back to the community and serve still ranks right beside it. So being able to find those individuals who can qualify for military service, that pool gets smaller and smaller every year, be it physical requirements or even educational requirements. We've seen even just a huge reduction in ASVAB scores over the last couple of years, because I think of a lot of virtual learning affected students differently. And so we are struggling with getting qualified candidates to begin with. So being able to provide something that allows us to recruit and retain our soldiers while educating the force with higher degrees, allowing them to grow within the military, both from the officer corps and senior enlisted corps, is important to us. So providing an education benefit to recruit, retain is part of the benefit. Arguably, to get those higher ranks and to grow in the military, you have to have those educational benefits as well. So it certainly serves our organization, I guess, as a dual purpose. With that being said, I will pause, because I know Mr. Frisby has been championing this effort for us for quite some time.
Yes, Jeff Frisbee. I'm the Executive Director for the National Guard Association of Michigan. The organization, we represent the approximate 11,000 guardsmen that are within the state. So your school teachers, your doctors, your nurses, your neighbors, that's the demographic of the National Guard and who we represent. A large portion of that membership also comes from the college students that are currently in our higher education systems. The program that we're specifically talking about today, MINGSTAP, the Michigan National Guard State Tuition Assistance Program, it's been around since 2014, and we provided a handout for you this morning to kind of cover a few basic talking points. But since that program has been in existence, what most of your neighboring states have done and other states across the nation is they've really readdressed this program and looked at how they can modernize this benefit, how they can make it more applicable to the current demographic of who we're trying to recruit and to the membership that we're trying to retain within the state National Guards. And since 2014, the program here in Michigan has remained relatively untouched. There's been a few attempts to kind of address some of the things like the tuition per hour cap, the annual cap that students are allowed to do, also some of the processes in which that National Guardsman is eligible to qualify for the program. But what you found is that you've got states that are neighboring you right now that are offering 100% tuition waivers for those students to go to school. They're looking at options of how they pay for tuition for online classes, and also the benefit of how they can transfer their state tuition assistance program to the spouses and dependents of those guardsmen. So when you look at modernizing this program and you think about what it is that the current citizen gets in the Guard for, the benefits, the package, what it entices them to serve their country, and as he mentioned, education benefits being one of the top priorities, you honestly have guardsmen right now who are going to drill weekend serving their nation almost for no money. And I say that with respect to their guard check, the drill check that they earn in their service is 100% going toward things like health care, TRICARE Reserve Select. So they'll serve that entire weekend and leave with no money coming to their family. They're doing that so that they can help pay for the benefit of having health care for their family. So what additional benefits, what package can we put together to best represent our investment as a state into the further education, to the benefits of their service, and to help us maintain the most adaptable, ready, and capable force in the nation? And this program, MINGSTAP, is one of the efforts that we can do that through.
Thank you very much for that. Are we moving on now to, Yep. However you prefer.
Come on in here.
We're playing musical chairs. Good afternoon. I'm Adam Ollier. I'm the director of the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, and when I was a state senator, I introduced the legislation to do exactly this. As we look out as to why, I won't bore you with the recruiting issues because that's already been made abundantly clear. I'm going to talk to you about what it means when you are actively serving in the Guard or the Reserve. Most people who are doing this because they want to be doing it and their families wish that they were not doing it, right? So when you watch recruiting posters or you hear the thing, you hear people say 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, and that does not sound like a lot. My wife would say that that's a quarter of all weekends and always all the good ones. And so as you look forward into it and you say, well, why do people do this? What difference does it make? The expansion of the middle class that we often credit to the New Deal came as a result of the benefits that service members earned from the GI Bill. It gave them preferential housing. It gave them primarily access to education benefits. It gave them employment and health care. And so when you say, what is the safety network that we build our service members around and why do they join? So many of the people who join, and we're talking about less than 1% of people in the general population, and often families that serve at incredibly high numbers. So when you're talking about a family, the number of moms who send 4 Marines out of her household are really high. And so what we're asking is that you allow those service members to make the benefits that they've earned available to the people who allow them to serve, because that's really who's taking the brunt of this thing, right? When I'm in my uniform, when Colonel Myers is out looking as shiny as he does, people say thank you, they salute, they recognize his service. But when his wife is at the grocery store, when he's gone, she's just at the grocery store alone. And that is what we are trying to make some sense, so that she knows that while he's gone, he's also earned a benefit that's going to be available to a child that she could take advantage of. And the reason that that's so important for our military spouses is because they are the hardest population to employ, because they have to move with their spouse. And 50, 60, 70 years ago, that may have been a possible solution, but almost every household is a two-income earning household, except military families, which is why it's so much more likely that they need government assistance to survive, because our systems are designed for people to have two income earners in homes. And many of them can't do that because they can't maintain the education that is necessary for them as they move 2 or 3 times. One of my closest friends in the Army, his wife is a pharmacist. They're from the state of Wisconsin, so we'll give them that. But she's had to take the pharmacy exam 3 times in 3 different states. And as he is now stationed at Fort Bragg, she opted not to, and to just be a stay-at-home mom. For the record, she made 1.5 times what he makes as a captain in the Army. But because the licensure change, because all those things are such an undue burden on families, she decided not to do that. Now, Michigan has corrected the licensing issue, but we haven't dealt with the cost of spouses and their children in trying to get the education and the training that the MingStat program would allow. Because it's not just, hey, you want to go to college, it also provides for some other trainings that are going to be necessary, whether you want to become a barber or, honestly, because of the work we did last time, if you want to go back to flight school or get some of your hours, or trucking, or some of the other careers that we know are deeply the skill sets that are deeply missed right now, whether it be welding or some of the other programs that there are not natural funding sources for. So that's why it's so important that this is available to spouses and dependents. Now, people will often say, well, it's going to be more expensive. Yes, it's going to be more expensive because people who earned a benefit are now able to take advantage of it when they may not have been previously able, because their service as a civilian, their civilian work life, does not allow them to do additional training and serve in the military, because our Guard members serve at higher volumes and are deployed more and are called up more now than they have in pretty much any other recent time, probably since we've had a standing Army. So that's why it's so important that we expand to not just the service members, but to their spouses and dependents, because we want people to actually take advantage of this program. I'm a reservist, and my unit is in Ohio. And in Ohio, spouses and dependents are able. And when we talk about the value proposition that someone gets to serve in the Ohio Guard compared to the Michigan National Guard, it's not the same. People serve in Michigan because they want to serve in Michigan. People go to Ohio because it makes more sense for them financially. And we see that significantly continuing to happen. I just got back from the National Conference of State Directors of Veterans Affairs, and Indiana and Ohio are always looking to poach Michiganders and seem to be doing a pretty decent job because they provide a higher level of benefit. And if we were talking the same way about a corporation going from Michigan to Ohio or Indiana, we would all say that it's unacceptable and we weren't going to let it happen. But yet we continue to let our sons and daughters go to other states, not because they want to serve there, not because it's a different flag on their shoulder, but because it makes better sense for them and their family financially. If there was a population we should be trying to keep here, I think it's this one.
Thank you for that. I don't know if anybody else, if Christine was presenting today or no?
I wasn't presenting, no, I'm just.
Okay, you're just here. Yeah, no, thank you so much for this, because I think it was your Senate Bill SB 104 that you presented, that you had for eligible family members, spouses, and benefits, and dependents to have those benefits. And it is one reason why I have dropped a bill that largely mirrors exactly that legislation. And I anticipate it should be referred to committee later today. So on that note, I don't know, before I open it up for questions, if there are sort of other incentives the department is working on as well for, recruitment and retention.
I'm not going to speak.
Terry, do you want to?
We are looking at packaging for future years, just that. So kind of what Director Ollier had mentioned, we look at this regionally, for sure. We are losing enlistments to neighboring states. They are offering some better benefit packages than we are. By far, this is our number one priority because this affects all of our service members, especially when we look at the skilled trades gaps and this being able to cover skilled trade licensures and those other things as well. So this is by far our number one priority. With that being said, there are additional recruiting incentives that we're looking to package together. Now, they're not quite ready for prime time. I'll say our staff is doing that work to see what kind of benefit we can look at. But we are definitely looking at different things, and even nationally. So when Director Ollier was talking about, and Mr. Frisbee were talking about healthcare, Jeff goes to DC quite a bit to ensure that our service members are provided TRICARE, just like the active duty service members, because medical readiness is something that we're required to do. And so they are absolutely working that from a national perspective, where all the 50 states and 3 territories and District of Columbia are all joining together in that effort. So we look at this for certain things from that national perspective, and then other things, how to keep us competitive with our force here in the state and how to recruit and retain those individuals. So I will say we kind of go back and forth on a little bit. Are we ready today to present? No, frankly, we're not. We want to make sure that we get a good bang for the buck, if you will. Our resources are, of course, limited. We take that seriously. And, Christina Postle over there, she's not saying much today, but she absolutely holds us to account as the CFO and ensures that we have good supporting metrics for everything that we execute. And so we have to make sure we're ready to go before we ask. But I will say we are packaging some interesting recruiting stuff down the road.
Great, and we will be here to listen to those ideas when you have them.
Absolutely, and just as a couple of things quick, I mentioned we're struggling with ASVAB scores. That's a real deal. The testing, the initial testing scores required for military service, a huge drop over the last couple of years. And so the active Army has started a pilot program at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, to bring service members in early before they would go off to basic training, to train them both on getting more fit so they can pass the basic physical fitness requirements, but also to increase their educational scores. We get a few of those seats during this pilot program, but being able to expand that and getting more qualified people for military service is also one of our concerns, as an example, if you will. And so how do we help in that endeavor? So,
If I could tag on, we're going to be working as an agency to do more to recruit and to support service members and their families, and to look through holistically this kind of support network that we have for people who are actively serving. And so much of the benefits that legislators try and pass on to veterans everyone's not eligible for them, because the definition of veteran is, are you a protected veteran? It's not, have you served? So you take someone like Colonel Myers, who has been in the Guard for an extended period of time. Let's say he had never done an active duty or a federal mobilization. He would not technically count as a veteran, or someone who has not separated would not technically count as a veteran. So oftentimes we see these kind of challenges that with Terry and I, we hope to be coming back to talk to you about some of these things and the simple definitional changes to ensure that the programs that we already have that are designed to support our spouse and dependents and our families are actually working for them. But the definition of who a veteran is plays a huge role in who we're counting. So if you are, for example, a guardsman and you just came out of basic training, you've been in the Guard for 3 or 4 years, but have never been activated, you're not a veteran. If you're on active duty for your first 3 years and you're still there and you're like, hey, I'm gonna come back to Michigan, when you're applying, you do not often qualify, because the question people are asking is, are you a protected veteran, not have you served? And so we're gonna be pushing really hard to get corporations and businesses and all the incentives that we say to be for people who have served. And if we can start to move in that direction, it's going to do a much better job of bridging that gap. Because we believe that there are more than 500,000 Michiganders who have served in the military and they're counted as veterans. And so the number who have served is probably higher than that, but the number of families that have served is significantly higher than that. And we don't have a great idea of what that number is yet. And so we'll certainly be looking to get more support as we look forward into that. Colonel Myers is a military officer, so he's going to follow all the rules, but just a flagrant rule breaker. As we talk about this moment, when I was in the legislature, we got some additional dollars over for the JRTC program in Detroit to do more work with the National Guard. I know there is a huge need to spend with the JRTC programs across the state, particularly to help them qualify both physically and educationally. So that is certainly a space where additional funding and support would make a huge difference, whether that be through the National Guard or through the school system.
Thank you for your passion around this issue. Okay, we have some questions. Representative Kara?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. I just wanted to ask, do you think it would be appropriate if our National Guard were to be deployed overseas without a congressional declared war?
That's a you question. Or a JAG question.
I don't know that that's a great question. However, you know, I have deployed several times throughout my career, right? And all of those, I believe, followed the legal process. Now, if you're asking, you know, certainly my opinion, we appreciate the support of any engagement we're going to, right? So regardless of where that is, and I would argue that every one of my deployments, we seem to have that support from the federal and state legislative and elected folks, as well as the president, regardless who's sitting in the White House. So I would say that from a person serving and who's physically on the ground, that's really what we're asking for. Now how it's declared nationally or by the state is up to those that and you can debate that in the halls however you want, but when I get called up in order to go somewhere, we're all in, right? And our focus is on the brother or sister beside us, not what happens necessarily in DC.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Representative Rogers?
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to something Director Ollier said, which I want to highlight, especially for new members. I think it's critically important. So he said, asking the question, have you served? And this is something I learned last year when we did a statewide tour with the former director, and that was something that was pointed out, is that sometimes we as legislators and our staff ask that question of, are you a veteran? And there's people that don't identify. So I just want to encourage everyone to change how you're asking the question, encourage your staff to change how you're asking the question. Have you served? You may get a different response and you may be able to reach out to more people. So thank you for highlighting that. I also wanted to just briefly say that I was really proud that we were able to appropriate additional money and have federal matching money for the armories and improving facilities, because I think women have probably not been retained in our armed forces and National Guard because of some of the archaic facilities. So I was really proud to see some of the work that's being done. And for those of you, again, that aren't aware, our bathroom facilities are getting upgraded, and there's going to be breastfeeding accommodations at a lot of them. So I think that could go a long way towards helping specifically women be retained. My question for you is, in the document you provided, it says the recommendation is for the appropriation to go from 6.5 million to 12 million. Do you have a sense, and if you have to get back with us, that's fine, but do you have a sense of how many more people that would serve, and how many are taking advantage right now? And so what would that represent, that increase?
So let me start with this. The letter that you have attached to the handout, that was actually written for the last congressional session. So Senator Ollier's bill, whenever we wrote that, that was based off that document. And I understand that maybe there has been some slight changes to that dollar amount for this current congressional session. I may be wrong about that, but that's not the impression that I'm under right now. I do not personally know how many it will impact or how many it will affect, but I do know that we have Guardsmen right now who number one, like he said, who necessarily don't qualify for certain federal benefits because of their actual VA definition of their service. but there are guardsmen in the state who are already set in a career. They already have a path forward for what they're going to do for the rest of their life. It's their child or maybe their dependent who, like you said, are looking for an opportunity to have a second income, or that child who maybe doesn't have a scholarship lined up, not quite sure what he wants to do after he graduates high school. They're looking at this benefit saying, if I could just pass this along, I've earned this benefit for my service. I'm not asking for a second set of benefits. I'm not asking for, an additional tuition assistance program. The benefit that I've earned, I would like to be able to pass off to my son or daughter so that they can use that benefit. So the current set of guardsmen that we have that are either utilizing this benefit or potentially could utilize this benefit, that additional monies will not only help with that issue, it will also address the rising costs of higher education with the fact that we haven't adjusted the tuition reimbursement that we provide through MeanSTAP over the last 20 years, basically.
And one more follow-up, if I may. Could you also give us a snapshot, again, if you need to get back to us, that's fine. How long ago did Indiana and Ohio increase their benefit, and how long has this gap existed? I'm just curious on the history.
Well, so let me start with Arkansas. So unfortunately, my service was not in the state of Michigan. I apologize for that. Colonel Myers he doesn't let me forget that very often. My service was actually in the Arkansas Guard, and 10 years ago, we started the process of modernizing the Arkansas Guard Tuition Assistance Program. And if you really want to get into a great conversation with me later on, I can tell you about the evolution of tuition assistance as it existed and how 15 years ago, the way that tuition assistance existed was it was a 100% waiver if you were active duty. It was a 75% waiver if you were the National Guard. And what states across the nation did was they said, we'll just waive that 25%. And then that way people can go to school for free. But whenever tuition assistance evolved in the active component to where it exists today, where it's $250 per credit hour, that whole system went away for the National Guard. And it no longer impacted how the reserve component received tuition assistance, which is why state tuition assistance programs came into existence. So that happened about 15 years ago, and through the course of those 15 years, states have slowly changed how they implement this program, which is why even though there are 54 state tuition assistance programs, none of them match. None of them are the same. They're all implemented differently. They're all executed differently. There are some states right now that have agreements with the colleges and universities through their higher education department to actually waive the tuition fees for guardsmen, and that's how they pay for it, versus a reimbursement program or a application program where the guardsman has to go and apply for the program, receive a check after they've paid for their tuition. So it's implemented 54 different ways.
And maybe more directly towards your question, Representative, I was the recruiting commander. Now I get to oversee recruiting commands, so that poor commander. Back in 2015, 2016, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois were all leading the region with their benefit package, just like they are today. So they were offering 100% tuition assistance. They had different types of agreements with their state universities. So one of them you have to go to a state, public university. I believe it's Illinois, and I might mess this up. It's either Illinois and Indiana or Illinois, Ohio. They allow it for their public or their private. They just cap the dollar amount, kind of like we do. None of them offer it for skilled trades right now, at least that I'm not aware of. So that's something that our program, I think, is an incentive for those seeking careers in skilled trades. We targeted that because it was a gap in both civilian industry needs as well as a recruitment gap. But overall, our region is faring a little bit better with their programs than we are. Hence that we asked for it to be updated again.
Representative Bazat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation. Enjoyed listening to the issues. On your Ohio issue, though, I think the University of Michigan is poaching down there, so that's causing you a problem. Football program.
Hey, you should do more of it.
But part of my question was answered. What is the pay discrepancy? You mentioned that they'll go to service for a weekend and just pay for their benefits. Can you address that, or do you know what the differences are there? The pay discrepancy or the benefits?
So how our service members are paid on a traditional drill weekend, it's one drill day is 2 days of active duty pay. So we call those MUTAs, and please don't ask me what that acronym stands for. We have a ton of them, and I just go by the acronyms a lot of times. But those training days are the same pay scale as an active duty member. But if you drill, a Saturday, Sunday, you get 4 days of active duty pay based on your rank, your years of service, et cetera. Now, like what Mr. Frisbee mentioned, on the active duty side, all your benefits and stuff are covered. On the National Guard side, a lot of our service members take advantage of reduced TRICARE costs. Where on active, they don't pay for that. We can, it's an opt-in, so it's almost kind of like a Blue Cross Blue Shield program where you pay a percent to the provider. And how we equated that was if you have a family of 4, you're almost signing off. If you're a younger service member, you're almost signing off your entire drill check just to have health care. So that was kind of the example he tried to tie to it.
Just to follow up on that, the other thing though is, he was talking about a 4-day drill. So let's say I'm gone for a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those 2 days, and most people, they are not getting paid their regular work job, right? And so it's a cost hindrance to folks because a lot of people make more money not in uniform than they do in uniform until you get relatively high up in space. So some employers offer differential pay. So that would be if, like for me, if I'm working my state job and the Army paid me $100, I would have made $150. The state would still pay that $50. Some employers do what they call differential pay. Some employers pay you a certain number of days, so you get 12 days, 10 days, whatever the case may be. So that's why you see a lot of folks who work in the Guard or the Reserve who are also federal employees because they get a certain number of days or they get differential pay. So when he was talking about folks losing money to go to drill, you have to drive to drill, you lose money in those shifts, and we see that a lot with our younger enlisted soldiers who are working and they make more money in their civilian life, but the active duty component, because they get so many more allocations, so they get their basic housing allotment, they get free health care, they get they get reduced child care, the benefits accrued in an active duty component far outweigh the salary differential, and that's not the case for Guard members, which is why it's so much more expensive. And if you're in the reserves, you're in the worst spot because nobody's paying any of those things.
Yeah, and so, Director Ollier mentioned, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. I would challenge pretty much any guardsman to make that pattern exist. That's just the expression that we use sometimes when we're trying to get people to join the Guard, but once the reality sets in, you spend a lot of time, even in a civilian capacity. So if we have guardsmen who have civilian jobs or if they're in college, they're going to do some online training on a Thursday or Friday before drill. They're going to be making phone calls to make sure that everyone's ready and prepared. There are leadership tasks that happen outside of that Saturday, Sunday drill period. And so what we find very, very often, we have guardsmen who are literally making the decision, do I want to use my guard check for health care, or do I want to take a portion of my drill check and put that into my military retirement, because that is actually an option now, or do I buy Pampers this month? How do I pay for wipies and baby food? They're making very, very difficult decisions that you would hope that 19, 20-year-olds do not actually have to make by being a member and joining the service. So there is a lot of, I don't know if I would call it a pay discrepancy. There are very difficult decisions being made in how they manage their drill check and their money that they get as a benefit of their service.
Madam Chair, can I one quick follow-up? For my fellow reps, when I was the sheriff, we had a program that was promoted by the National Guard where they would recruit and take business owners down to bases. I went to Norfolk, Virginia, and I spent the weekend there seeing what the National Guard does and what the military does. Do you still have that program to try to educate to support?
We do. It's called the Boss Lift.
Okay.
In addition to that, we do other programs where we bring up employers of service members. We also have award programs to recognize those businesses who do some of the benefits that Director earlier was just mentioning. So we present them a nice certificate for something they can hang on their wall. And then you reminded me from your sheriff experience, we recruit some of the same folks that Department of Corrections and the MSP and even, the Oakland County Sheriff reached out. How can we're fighting for the same drug-free, pass the basic test, and are physically fit folks, right? Even the power companies have reached out for line workers, right? And so how can we combine recruiting efforts, that there's a full-time opportunity here with the MSP or with corrections or even with consumers, and you have a part-time thing here with the National Guard. So our recruiting force is blending and working with other folks too, because sometimes we're fighting over the same talent when maybe we could all work together a little bit.
Right, you're exactly right, because military, in a paramilitary operation, is so much easier to deal with, because they're already used to following orders and directions, so they're much easier, and they're in shape. So that's an advantage too, but I was proud. We had about 150 employees, and we had 30 veterans, so I prioritized that. And that program, the Boss Lift, really helped with that with other business owners especially, so I'm glad you're still doing that.
We try and bring representatives up too, so anytime you want to come see training.
I'll go in a heartbeat, thank
Always
you.
welcome.
Thank you so much for coming here today and educating us on this really important issue around recruitment and retention, and we'll look forward to having you back here again. It's been incredibly enlightening. To that end, I don't see any other questions. Oh. Is there, yeah. You have a minute. Send a waggle
Mine
on.
are really brief. I just was curious. The first one, what part of the budget does this allocation come out of? Is it the general fund or the school aid fund? General fund. And then the second one I had is that, it seems like we're giving credits for tuition. Has there been any talk about allowing people to use that for housing? And because there's the caps, if we're going to raise the cap, in my head, it makes sense if someone decides, hey, I'm going to go to a school that has lower tuition costs to still be able to use that benefit for housing or something else. Is that something that has been considered, or is there a reason that's not currently in the legislation?
Well, again, I'm probably overstepping, but welcome to Colonel Myers. I overstep all the time. Yeah, thanks. So with that being said, there is one of our company commanders in recruiting, Captain Jennifer Morrison, brought to my attention about a week ago with kind of the same idea. Hey, if this is just a general benefit, have we ever talked about this going towards an initial mortgage or something else? We have not. As a department, we haven't tossed that around, but I find the timing of the discussion interesting because, like I said, she brought it up from a recruiting commander's perspective, that was something that was being discussed, that can it be a benefit that we could transfer to an initial mortgage?
He's talking about.
Yeah, I was talking about like university housing, but that I think is also a great idea.
And I don't know if it could only be used for college, the credits, and it's a reimbursed program right now. We had struggled, I think, in the past where we really tightened down the program, where if a soldier drops a class or fails a class, we're not paying for it. This is our taxpayer dollars too. And so show us that you get a C or better, and then we reimburse. And we do have challenges, and we work with universities to give us the bills on the back end. Most of our state universities are really good with working with us, but that is an outreach effort we have. But yes, if it, I have a daughter, she goes to out-of-state school, and that housing and food bill, well, it's roughly $7,500 this semester, so that's certainly the same type of burden.
It would certainly help if you did it, and I don't think anyone's going to complain over here.
So as I mentioned earlier, there are really 54 different models of what tuition assistance looks like per state. There are models out there where the state, like I said, the states have partnerships with the universities, and that's how the money is transacted. It's never through the soldier, never through the state military department. And in those type of programs, since it's through the schools themselves, it can be applied to housing, to books, incidental fees such as parking, other things like that. So there are models out there that exist. Right now, we haven't looked at those steps in moving forward that direction. I think that eventually, maybe in the future, the Michigan State Tuition Assistance Program might evolve into something like that. But right now, that's not where it currently lies.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further business before the committee, we need a motion to adjourn. Representative Stone moves to adjourn. Hearing no objections, the committee is adjourned.